Every marriage has 100% chances of succeeding. You know why? Because God created marriage, and God never creates failure, and God never designs anything to fail. Every marriage has 100% chances of succeeding. Is your marriage struggling and you're wondering whether it will ever succeed, whether you will ever make it, whether it's even worth holding on to? You got to tune into Unlocking Marital Bliss, because right here we provide the keys to unlock the bliss in your marriage, and you will be able to succeed. We've had testimonies, and lives are changing day by day.
Marriage must be a discipline. It must not be handled like a casual thing.
As women, when we have the outward expression, even our form of respect is tied to the outward things that you do.
Some women now have working class. They don't know how to handle their husbands because the marriage was has become like question and answer marriage. Do you have any tea? Don't you have hands to prepare it? Why have you come back late? Did I take your blanket? It's question and answer marriage.
Not any other place, but every Sunday, 3 p.m. right here at UBC. With the one and only Cyrus Rod, not any other. Unlocking Marital Bliss.
Hey, what's up everybody? We are here recording for a global broadcast called Good Friday, and you have to mark your calendar. It's all going down Friday, April 2nd. It's going to be incredible and encouraging, so I want to encourage you to join us. It's going to be awesome. Mark your calendar, grab your friends, grab your family, post it on socials, hashtag Good Friday 21.
This weekend on UBC.
The brother I'm having is one of the people that has been entertaining guys during this isolation time and the COVID time, because we needed a bit of smiling and we needed a bit of some happy moments.
Uncle Mo's comedy looks simple. A mechanic in a garage musing over the everyday aspects of the Ugandan life.
If we are to be honest with ourselves, to Uganda, calling off the MTV Africa Music Awards is like telling a student who hasn't read that there's no test.
His content renders to be top-notch and simply inimitable.
The biggest art in what I do, according to me, is the writing, because the writing comes from nowhere. Yeah. It's the creation. So every time someone asks me, but who writes these things? I'm like, okay, someone at least remembers that after all the acting, actually the real art is that every single line that I've just said, I wrote it down first. Shout out to Lucky. And she found my work, and I enjoy, you see, I think that's what they call organic growth, that someone lets you, when I'm starting this, and everyone there who has a startup, man, startups are, I was even about to swear, but they're hard. Tough, they're tough, man. The biggest mistake anyone will ever do in their lives is to try to be comedians.
It is intellectually engaging.
Court does not sit to waste its time. If you have no defense, it chases you.
It is a ruling on the foundations. Business has been conducted in a certain way.
Banks take money from us, depositors. All of us seated here have got money in the bank. And even before you walk out, they've given that money to somebody else.
Deeply incisive.
Here is a credible alternative political force.
Let's get into this election and let's choose right.
Through that vote that you will contribute towards building a new Uganda.
Authentically symbolic and insightful.
We should work so hard to evacuate this power.
Behind the Headlines, every Wednesday at 10 p.m. with Charlse Odongotho.
A very welcome.
Probably the most experienced talk show moderator in Uganda, with a team of illustrious panelists. Honorable Abdul Katuntu, a seasoned legislator, politician, and senior lawyer. Honorable Margaret Mohanga, a veteran journalist, legislator, entrepreneur and development consultant, and Ramadan Gobi, an economist and university don.
There is no country which has lost, which has failed or has had collapsed democracy when it is above $6,000. So,
all on your public broadcaster, UBC Inspire.
Hello, welcome to Be Money Wiser. Every time you get a loan, you're anticipating to either get something out of it, or to reach, or to reap big out of it. But if you don't really stick to the plan, things might turn around on the wrong side. Today we are talking about a loan diversion, and we're going to listen to a story by Luswata Albert, where he tells us why he diverted the money he got that he was supposed to invest in a business, but instead he had an emergency.
My name is Albert Luswata. I'm a journalist, I'm a businessman, and I'm an artist. I got a loan from the bank, and I wanted to do business of a restaurant. So I got it. After getting it, my kid got sick. I had no alternative because the wife was just on my neck, and the only alternative is to get on that money to take my kid to the hospital. None of it around, I lost some of the money. I can say capital that I lost. I didn't know that I thought that I would get back that money to still continue operating my restaurant, which I failed. What do I learn from this? It's a question. What I learned is that I was not prepared. So I need to be prepared, or if you want to do business, you have to prepare yourself. Don't just say, tomorrow I'm going to do this business, tomorrow I'm going to do this, tomorrow I'm starting this business without a plan. So you have to make a plan to start up a business. In every business that you do, you must plan. It's not to lose. So I done that. Thank you so much.
This gentleman borrowed with a plan. He did everything that was required of him to get that loan. But then he was hit by this emergency that really, possibly when he looked around in the resources that he had, the only possible way out was this money that he had got for the loan.
True. At most times, we usually blame people for borrowing money without a plan,
yes,
or a clear vision of what they are going to use the money for. Or even when they have a plan, they borrow at the wrong time.
Yeah.
You have a plan, but you're not ready to execute it.
Yeah.
But you can see for him, he was more than ready with a plan to get started with a business, but then an emergency comes in. Is an emergency a justification for someone to divert money?
One of the main cause of loan diversion is poor client relationship management. Most of the time, lenders, financial institutions do not understand their clients, do not give them financial literacy to make them understand that when you take the money, it's the purpose. The money should be properly utilized. So, number two.
Very good evening and welcome to this edition of Behind the Headlines. I must apologize for starting late, unacceptable by all standards, but let's begin. And this is Behind the Headlines. This Wednesday, the last day of March 2021. It's the 31st of March 2021. We are entering into the second quarter of the year if we go by the government planning year. Today we are going to be looking at 100 years of Ugandan Parliament, but also within the program we shall be also taking a look at the lessons. These senior Ugandans have to take a look at the lessons that the late President Magufuli of Tanzania, who was laid to rest last Friday, is leaving for the region and for all of us. But first we will be looking at 100 years of the Ugandan Parliament. And to discuss that, we have put together a very, a very formidable team of a lady and gentlemen who have seen it all. They have been in the House, they have been in the administration and management of Parliament within this 100 years, even if very recently. And let me start from the far left. We have the Honorable Emmanuel Dombo. Dombo is currently Director of Information and Publicity in the NRM Secretariat, but he was it 4 times or 3 times?
4 times.
Yes, he was MP for 20 years. And within those 20 years, he was a Commissioner of Parliament. The Parliamentary Commission runs the administration of Parliament. They oversee the recruitment or hiring of all staff and personnel needed to work in Parliament. They oversee the preparation of the budget and its management. They oversee the execution of everything within Parliament. So the planning and all that is within the hands of the Commission. So Dombo was a commissioner in the 8th Parliament.
In the 9th Parliament.
You were in the 9th Parliament. Oh, that's very recent. It looks like it's some time ago, but you're most welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Mr. Odongotho, and good evening, our listeners. It's a pleasure for me to be back here on Behind the Headlines.
Thank you very much, and it's good to always have you. Next to Honorable Dombo is a lady. This is your, Honorable, this is your maiden appearance on this show. Wow. It's good to see the Honorable Alice Alaso, former Member of Parliament for Serere, and then for Soroti before that, before it was divided. And Honorable Alice Alaso was in Parliament for you. You did three terms or 2?
3.
You did 3. Wow. 15 years in Parliament and was also a commissioner.
Yes, sir.
Good. And Honorable Alice Alaso is now the Deputy National Coordinator of the Alliance for National Platform. And so she is with us today to discuss this topic. Finally, we've got Mr. Ramadan Gobi. He's not yet an MP, but he watches what MPs do, their planning, and how they are running the country. And, of course, he likes talking about national issues. But Ramadan Gobi is he teaches, he's a professor of economics at Makerere University Business School. So we need to start the discussion. Let me start with Honorable Alice Alaso. Give us a glimpse into what came to your mind when last week Uganda celebrated 100 years of a parliament that you were part of. You were privileged to be part of this towards almost the tail end of the 100 years, but that you could read the history and say from 1921 we saw this starting, and this is how it has been growing or, progressing.
Thank you very much, Charles. And let me also say good evening, viewers. Really, it's a privilege to be here for the first time. I'm really happy. And so, 100 years. What comes to my mind, I was trying to think, so are we going to celebrate the fact that there was something, then the legico, and then there was what, and is it that chronology of a parliament that was going to celebrate? Is it the growth of numbers? Is it the achievements? Is it the execution of mandate? And so I told myself that if there is anything worth celebrating really, it should revolve around the execution of the parliamentary mandate. I think that for me would be at the core of celebrating the 100 years. And because then I would have loved to look at how it has grown over time. I would have loved to talk about how bloated the parliament is every other time we add in a new constituency, and how much we spend on parliament, and more like any other aspect of public administration. But then I think really for me, it is the fact that in the parliamentary arena, Ugandans get represented and have gotten represented over years. And the idea behind the role of parliament in any supposedly democratic setting would be that parliament executes its mandate to make the laws for the land, to oversee government, to ensure accountability, to represent the voices of the people, and then hoping that in a reciprocal way, then government also treats parliament as an institution to which the executive will account, to which they will derive legitimacy by addressing the issues that are close to the hearts of the people whose representatives sit in parliament, and then an institution to which they will bring forth policies for critiquing, so that whatever the executive then does will be helpful to ordinary people. And I want to hasten to say that it looks to me that over years there's been a dwindling significance of that mandate. That over years we no longer see the kind of legislature. I suppose Honorable Dombo will help me at some point. But when we came in the 7th Parliament, the talk was about the 6th Parliament, what they had done, how they were able to hold government accountable, even censure some ministers. That was the talk. And then in the 7th Parliament, we were there struggling. I think it was around the 7th Parliament that we started really moving away. Instead of being the defenders of constitutionalism, we were the ones who literally tore apart the Constitution, removing the safeguards of term limits. And by the time the 9th and the 10th Parliament then came in and removed the age limit. So gradually, I ask myself, so what is there to celebrate now? How much clout does Parliament have as an institution that represents people? And I am kind of disappointed that as we go along these 100 years, I suppose that Parliament is becoming weaker and weaker by the day.
Okay, becoming weaker and weaker. Honorable Dombo, what do you make of your time and significance that you see of that great house?
Charles, until the celebration of the 100 years, not many people could recall that Parliament had been around for 100 years. And I remember when it was reported, it became so intriguing that I started searching. 100 years, Uganda is not 100 years. Because many people associate the Parliament of Uganda with the country called Uganda getting independence.
Yeah.
And that's the farthest people would want to remember. So this was a good bit of history. But when I went to read about the Parliament then, in 1921, it had 7 members.
Yes.
And of the 7 members, there was no Ugandan.
Yeah.
So I wondered whose interests they were serving then. I'll need to do a little bit more research, find out the legal framework that existed then, the mandate that Parliament had, and the type of ordinances or laws that Parliament passed, if any, at that time. But for purposes of history and people to understand where we have come from, and to appreciate that despite the challenges that Parliament may have today, now we have a Parliament which is for the people of Uganda, constituting of Ugandans, elected democratically in their respective areas, and with the specific mandate prescribed in the Constitution. So, in the evolution of Parliament and its governance, we have now a structured organization with a specific mandate and with specific responsibilities. When you look at the Constitution right now, my sister Onaiwalaso and others who think like she does always want to talk about some of the weaker areas where Parliament may be misconstrued or interpreted by whoever wants, especially when it amended the Constitution. But these are responsibilities that are put within the Constitution, and these are mandates that are allowed within the Constitution. And I don't know why people always want to use negative language to say Parliament overthrew the Constitution. How would the Parliament overthrow a Constitution? Parliament just used its mandate to amend the Constitution using the laws that are provided for to do it. And we are very, also you remember how we participated in this debate. And this is something people must come up to appreciate, why certain things happened the way they did. I was one of the proponents in that Parliament, because when you look at NRM as an organization, NRM was formed with the historical mission of the founders. They sat, they synthesized the problem of Uganda, they went to the bush, waged a protracted war, and they had a mission to fulfill. Even when they instituted democracy and they started doing elections, and they did put term limits within the Constitution, I don't think they were putting those term limits conscious of the journey and the mission that the NRM had. Because when the 2 terms expired after the promulgation of the Constitution, the mission of NRM hadn't expired and hadn't been fulfilled. And the question was, how do you move on to execute the mission that took you to the bush, and at the same time, how do you stay within the bounds of the law without abrogating the Constitution? And some of us did propose at that time, you remember. When you look at in Namibia, they had specifically, they had to amend the Constitution. They provided for in the Constitution that they will have 2 terms with the exception of President Nuyoma as a founding president.
In the Constitution? In the Constitution. So they put the name of the president?
They put the name of the president, deliberately exempted him because of his historical contribution. At that time of amending the Constitution, some of us were proponents of this view. To say, could we put this so that it works on subsequent presidents? But we exempt then the president, and so that it enables the NRM and its founding members to execute and fulfill the mission for which that they had gone to the bush. We debated and we voted, and that view was not bought. And we said, let us amend the Constitution so that everybody, whoever comes, we remove the term limits. It happened also the age limit. I wasn't in the Parliament. But these are debates that have come over time in the evolution of Parliament, and Parliament has been doing so in fulfillment of its obligations and in following the law without necessarily overthrowing the Constitution as others may want portrayed.
Okay. Now, we will be coming now to the issues one by one and looking at the nitty-gritty of some of the issues that you have run through. Whether or not there has been Chairman Norbert Mao usually says, the question, has it been that there is a difference between something that swells and something that grows? Quite an interesting term he gives it. So is our parliament swelling, or is it growing and you know, in its capacity to fulfill some of the roles that these members are referring to? So from a bird's eye view, Mr. Ramadan Gobi, 100 years. In the 11th Parliament is going to start with 529. Is it for 29? 529. The 100 years we had 7 MPs. Of course, they were all whites. Again, is it swelling of numbers or quality growth? We will be asking from a person like Ramadan, who likes referring to the results or the impact that we are seeing from that house, if they are there. So, Mr. Ramadan.
Thank you, Charles, and good evening to the viewers and the senior members of the panel today. I'm privileged to be seated here with you, having served in this house for those many years.
The two of them, 35 years.
Absolutely. Nearly my age, they were in the parliament. Now, the Parliament of Uganda has actually been always been large. I think Uganda loves big things than it says. Because Parliament proper, leave alone those, and it's good, Honorable Domba has put it in very good context. We may want to extend to that period when we were under colonial government, rather governance. The Uganda Parliament proper, of course, begins in 1962. And to me, that's the one I'm more interested in discussing, because the other one was just picking a few people, actually never elected, but just appointed. And even when they expanded it later from the 7 members, the logical, including now some blacks representing a few kingdoms, selected again, Buganda Kingdom, Bunyoro, and Busoga first. They were the only 3 allowed to sit in there. And then the trend went on. But at independence, when I was reading, I saw we had 92 members of parliament.
In 96, yeah.
92.
Yeah.
And
in 62.
Yes, in 1962.
Yeah.
And the population then was 7.2 million people. So these 92 people, for us who have numbers, we are representing each of them about 78,000 people.
It is almost a constituency.
1,000 people. The parliament, you are saying, which has either swollen or grown to 529 MPs, is coming at a time when Uganda has 44.2 million people. So it's going to indicate that each member is going to represent 83,000 people of Uganda. So if you went by ratios, this parliament is smaller than what was at independence. I'm not giving you...
That is a real quantitative quantitative look. Now you tell us, what was the revenue we would collect in 1962?
Yeah.
And what is the revenue? And then divide it.
No, first you go with the representation.
Yes, we are in representation, I agree.
In representation.
Yes.
So if you agree that in 1962 the parliament was
92
reasonable, 1962
yeah,
was reasonable, then you shouldn't call this one
blotted.
A blotted one, because the representation is much higher now. The numbers, I mean, the one MP is representing
less people.
More people.
More people.
83,000. The other one was representing only 78,000. But now, leaving alone the numbers, you come to now the aspect of looking after this parliament itself. And I think that's where we always focus.
Yeah.
How do you look after 529 people who are going to represent the Ugandans? First, we need also to put in context that half of the Ugandans they are going to represent are actually children. They don't vote, they don't pay tax, they are depending on their parents and a few other people. I haven't yet done an analysis to see the demographics of 1962, to see how many adults of that, because you know Uganda as a country has become younger. Now the median age in Uganda today is 16.4 years. It has slightly increased from about 15 years. Now 16.4 years. That's the person in Uganda who stands in the middle. If we were to queue up from the youngest who was born this morning to the eldest we have in the country, the person in the middle is 16 years. At independence, I presume he was a bit older than that. So we are having a problem that we are getting too much representation now, because now we are talking of only MPs, but they are local councils, they are village councils, and so on and so forth. And these are all adding to this cost of looking after these legislators at all levels. We needed to ask a question, and I think Honorable Raso was coming to it. What is there for us to celebrate in 100 years? And if we are to ask that, are Uganda's problems in need of legislation to solve them? Are they problems that require legislation such that we say, let us put emphasis there to get the legislative arm of government big as it is, well facilitated, and then it does its work? I wouldn't think that our problems actually are necessarily in need of legislation, because we have heard that Uganda, we are very good at making laws and policies and plans. But the problem is that we don't implement them. Actually, that the only policy or law or plan we haven't written is the policy or plan or law on implementation. And if we know that we are good at putting things on paper, talking them, debating, and we write the resolutions. Lawyers write draft, policymakers draft, planners draft, but we don't enforce them. Why don't we put more emphasis on where we have the weakness? And that is the enforcement, that is the implementation. One gentleman in America, I don't remember his name, but I remember what he said. He said that one of the greatest delusions in the world is the hope that the evils which are happening in society can be cured by legislation. It's a delusion, and I think Uganda, we are a laboratory to test this, because we have diagnosed a lot of diseases here, and Parliament has been prescribing medicine over the 100 years, but here we are. We have not transformed. Our main focus now should be socio-economic transformation. How do we achieve it? Because politics we have, to me I think Uganda politically, we have really practiced politics. There's a lot of politics in Uganda. Someone may think actually we are a fully developed country in terms of the way we debate politics. There's a lot of debate, because politics is about debate, about answering those questions which are not legal, and you answer them using political conversations. But Ugandans are broke. Ugandans are in subsistence farming. Ugandans whom we are asking to vote all the time, vote LC1, vote LC3, vote LC5, vote MP, vote president, and now by-elections are coming. These people whom we distract a lot with this voting, some of them are watching us right now. Their main problem is that this country has failed to promote an economy, a society which can give them a living wage, a standard of living which befits a person who should be voting.
Can Parliament play that role? Can they, in the current situation, let's say?
There are so many to play it. I really wonder how these 529 people are going to sit and agree on some of these things. First of all, will they get time even to debate them exhaustively?
Apart from the time, isn't it also true that the bigger the number, and if some people argue that the lower the quality, there are also some of them who do not understand if they can contribute to socio-economic development of this country. Let's face the reality.
Yeah. I was just, you know, these are honorable members. I don't want to talk like that. By the time people vote them, perhaps people know what they are voting them for. But that's being diplomatic. Now you were saying we are
I wish you well.
You are saying we are talking reality.
Yes.
The reality is, these members, even if they were SPAB, they did research on how we should contribute to the transformation of Uganda. I doubt that this speaker whom they are going to vote next month will be able to coordinate them, to steer them into a debate which brings out good points and resolutions that are going to put Uganda to another level. I really doubt. There are so many for them to have meaningful time to debate.
Okay, good. Let's come back to some of the issues that Alaso raised. You referred to the 6th Parliament, and you also touched on the 7th Parliament starting to drift. Do you think that the roles of Parliament have changed, or is it that our politics is the one that has changed, and with it has changed the critical role that Parliament is supposed to play? What's happening if to follow from your conclusion that it has gotten weaker and weaker?
Charles, I suppose both. I am actually very concerned that as a country, we are faced with a situation where there is a general weakening of all the institutions, to the extent that it would look to me like individuals are more powerful than the institutions. So institutional mandates have been cast aside. Unfortunately for Parliament, besides that weakening, you also have an overbearing executive. You also have a party in government that is not allowing for the thriving or the independence, at least to some degree. We are not saying that we are expecting a parliament that does not talk to the executive or where the executive has no interest. No. But we are saying a degree of independence. So you have a very weak parliament, institutions that are not working the way they should be, suffering a lot of compromise. At one point we were discussing whether a person should even continue to be a member of parliament and at the same time be a minister. You sit in the executive and then you come also and discuss what you brought in the executive and make your decisions and conclusions in parliament. Now, as a result, what we see is no longer the legitimacy that the executive was supposed to derive from parliament. That relationship of accountability to the people of Uganda. You witness a situation where instead of championing the interests of ordinary Ugandans, then parliament is there to more or less champion the interests of the executive and perhaps the president. I am looking at a situation where we all sit. We've been sitting in that house, and so we are all guilty as charged. We all sit there and watch the executive bringing this loan after this loan after this loan, and the country is sinking under a debt burden. And as legislators, we are not worried about those children Dr. Ramadan is talking about, that in 50 years' time, is it 50, maybe 40, maybe 30, that those children are going to have to sort out the debt burden. You are thinking of a situation where, yes, let's borrow some money and do some road, but there are hundreds of unutilized loans out there. There are situations of projects that have not been executed. I remember most vividly the money that was borrowed for landing sites. And from nowhere, I think the whole issue of developing those landing sites, was abandoned. But money had been borrowed. So what is the responsibility of parliament? Is it just to be there and say, okay, we will do any form of passing a budget, pass a budget for the sake, without looking at the moral, the ethical, and, without having any responsibility about how the money will be used? You pass a budget as we normally do, or we used to do, and massive corruption abounds in the country. And the same parliament still has the courtesy to approve an accounting officer in the next financial year who has had a very bad record. There were issues at the office of the Prime Minister. So you have an accounting officer, you have all that before parliament, but when they bring at the start of the financial year, the same news. The same parliament says continue with all that difficult record. I used to chair a park at one point. And one of the irritating things was there's something called classified expenditure. And so for purposes of classified expenditure, we had to swear an oath, confidentiality. But I can tell you, for the years I chaired the park, nobody brought, even when the Auditor General brought some statements, the entities that we were supposed to review refused to appear completely. So we are looking at this accountability relationship to the people of Uganda, that the government should come to our representatives, the parliamentarians, and prove to them that your taxes are being used to serve you. But instead, what we are being offered is that, if there is no hospital in a place called Serere. What you need is another member of parliament. What you need is another LC5. Divide it into 2 districts. Do what and do this and the other. So I find it extremely disturbing that while we are, Ugandans are also very good at celebrations. Dr. Ram, you talked about very good at policy making. We are also very good at celebrating things. I think thanks to COVID, we would be having a very big do in the Parliament of Uganda to celebrate 100 years. There would be a lot of money spent here and there. So you can do all that, but really how it translates into the life of the ordinary Ugandan is something that I keep wondering whether ordinary people. Years back I said that if the Ministry of Agriculture, if a ministry could die, like the way we human beings die, if the Ministry of Agriculture had died, many farmers would never have known that the ministry had died and was buried and funeral rites concluded.
But are they doing a lot of work? Maybe.
And, I used to say so those years. Now I don't know how they are doing. I have stopped following them in committees and whatever.
Because we had a discussion with, recently we had a discussion with Ministry of Agriculture officials, including the PS here, and they rolled out a lot of activities they are doing, especially in the countryside. Maybe Honorable Alice Alaso is now too engaged in ant things, and she is not in touch with the gardens. And
yes, I actually watched, I think I watched that show.
Yes.
And one of the people was talking about the Soroti fruit factory.
Yes,
and
yes.
my heart pained because I know how the oranges are rotting in Teso and how they don't have market. And then these experts come here and tell you how the Soroti fruit factory is helping to develop Teso. So, I mean, I was just illustrating that it is also possible that if Parliament does not sit for such a long time, even temporarily closes for half a year, not many people would miss the sittings in Parliament.
That's a very big indictment. Honorable Dombo, take it from that. Do you belong to the school of thought of those who say that Parliament has slowly drifted from its critical roles, and that, like Alice is suggesting, that you wouldn't miss it if it went off? Is that deeply thinking a good way to push the discussion?
Charles, currently the roles of Parliament, or members of Parliament, are clearly specified in the Constitution.
As has always been, right?
And the members of Parliament who get elected, when they go for campaigns, the roles that they stipulate them for themselves that they are going to undertake when they reach Parliament are totally different from what is reflected in the Constitution. And they usually do this as members of Parliament to undermine the incumbents so that they can gain favor in the eyes of the electorate.
The desperation at campaigns.
They'll tell you how they'll be buying coffins for the dead. They'll be mourning whoever dies. The president keeps asking and joking. He says, you people, are you funeral service? How can you be burying everybody who has died? You see now it is a trend in Uganda. Every member of Parliament buying an ambulance and putting his or her portrait there.
The last time I checked, actually, which is what speaks to what you're saying, the reality you're saying, but is also sad for the country.
Yes.
During COVID, I got involved, at a humanitarian level to mobilize some members to make available the ambulance. And we discovered that MPs combined have more ambulances than Ministry of Health.
Of Health.
Yes.
So that is failure to appreciate what one's role is, and they increase the clamor by some members of parliament that now, in order to serve the people best, they must pay them better. So that they use their income to do the roads, they use their income to buy the ambulances. But that's a problem and a distortion that has been manifested by the members of parliament themselves, by the environment in which we are operating, and at times by the statements of the politicians. For instance, we have had the ministers who go in people's constituencies and they say you have elected a bad milker, or you have elected a person who doesn't know how to do this, or if where is your leader, he should have already fixed this bridge. And you have seen members of parliament going to seek elections and they also do a manifesto. A member of parliament developing a manifesto for yourself. Which manifesto is that?
If you are independent.
Well, which manifesto is that? That is confusion. That's why in many countries they don't even allow this thing called independence. Because this should be organizational contestation. These are organizations contesting, saying that if you elect DP, this is what DP will do with your resources when you collect them. When NRM comes with a manifesto, they are showing you that when you collect your tax and mobilize other resources, because when you are in government, this is what we shall be doing. So, progressively, the first parliament, let us look at independence. The median age was higher. The level of education was not very high, but the civic consciousness of the people at that time was higher. People were struggling for independence. People are struggling for the rights of the individuals. And many people who are elected members of parliament may not have been graduates, but they were people who would talk firmly for their people whom they represent. Over the years, this is my experience, and I want to be honest, that democracy is going to become a very huge problem for this country and for Africa at large. I was seeing the trend in the current elections. And even when you go into the respective constituencies, somebody comes and stands up and he says, you have given Dombo to go and eat, give me also to go and eat. And the population stands up and they cheer. They say, yeah, let us also send Mr. So and so to go and eat. And that is something that is supported. And people cheer and they elect serious in saying so and so should also go and eat. And somebody comes and sits in Kampala and he looks for food, he or she. Right now, when you look at the majority of the young people who are voting, who have become of voters' age, I think there is something magical about 18 years, according to the Constitution. That once you become of 18 years, you have now become of age to know what is due for yourself and what you should do, who you should vote in order to represent you well. And this is going to be a very huge challenge. At one time, African countries may have, and this is a prediction, to find out whether they should be resolved, the democratic issue or governance, through democracy or through selection. And right now we have countries for which we can do comparison. China does not have a fully-fledged democracy, but it has metamorphosized or transformed its population from a peasant economy, from a peasant people, to become the second biggest economy, almost perhaps the biggest economy in the world. We have countries in the Far East, one of the biggest democracies in the world. When they choose to begin voting, they can take 2 years or 3 when they are still voting. I'll not mention names of countries. That's not what has brought me here. But you know, in the Far East, there is a country which is very nuclear, but is also a very poor country.
Of course, you're talking about India.
Perhaps
the biggest, they call it the biggest democracy in the world.
Yeah. Has democracy in India transformed the people of India? to bring governance. And the African people, when they are going to look at themselves, given the challenges, the peasantry, the informal society, the peasant economy, people who produce for the stomach, as the president says, he's producing for Kida Kionka, really, will democracy deliver the goodies that we require? So these are challenges that even when we have good democracy and we elect people, it depends on the people that we elect. The constitutional framers of Uganda, in the recent promulgation of the 1995 constitution, they thought that perhaps by electing somebody who has reached senior 6, that would be a benchmark for somebody to begin appreciating the economic challenges, the economic theories, and the governance issues that must be at stake. And you have elected people either who have never reached senior 6, but they have gone and forged a certificate. You have elected people who have never been to Kampala or who don't know anything, and the only thing they have to look for is, how do I compensate for myself? Right now, many government ministries have been complaining that a number of members of parliament, not all, but once there is 1 or 2 who does it, then it affects the entire institution. That there is no loan, even when it was put in the constitution, that the people who should guard the population against the excesses of government by acquiring loans, and they safeguarded and said it is parliament that must approve. That they question many members of parliament, instead of asking what the loan is going to do, they ask the accounting officers that what is there for us in this loan. As long as you craft a loan and you are put in a package that you pay some members of parliament, then the question is that, so will that be fulfilling the requirements or the conditions or what was envisaged when these situations were put in place? So these are the challenges and contradictions. So over the years, when I joined Parliament in 1996, many of the members of Parliament were older. The young people who were elected, many of them were student leaders who had been in governance positions. I'll talk about Honorable Norbert Mao, who had been a guild president at Makerere. I'll talk about myself. I'd been in some students' organizations. Subsequently, people like Honorable Jacob Bolanya, when they came in, Honorable Jacob Bolanya was a speaker in Makerere, Students' Guild, and he was a very active member of the youth wing of the Uganda People's Congress, and people had been active. But right now, you have got a crop of many young people. They have not been student leaders. They don't lead in a social group or a betting club. They have not discussed any economic issues like we used to do in Makerere during the times of the professors' babbies. The issues of discussion at that time in the university. Right now, somebody walks, finishes senior 6 or 4 years a senior 6 certificate, and comes to Parliament, and all they do, people become deal chasers. So, all such people may not necessarily be those that were anticipated that will deliver the goodies of democracy as provided for under the national constitution.
Good. I'm enjoying it. And I think when we come back from the break, we should take a look at, we should inquire into whether it is generally human nature that has been shifting and changing towards individual acquisition and hence leading to what we are seeing, or it is actually the role that MPs are playing that has changed. We need to inquire into that as well, and I'm sure that I'll be starting with Ramadan Gobi, because the challenges and contradictions are now really palpable. The challenges and contradictions are palpable, and for me it is when we look at whether it is from 62 Parliament or looking at it from 100 years back, we need to really inquire into that. But let's take the break right now, and we will be right back.
should stop you from finishing what's yours. That's why MTN gives you data bundles that don't expire. Load MTN Freedom Bundles using My MTN app and enjoy the freedom to finish your data bundles. MTN.
Today tastes like a new tradition, like an old favorite. Tastes like all hands on deck and all eyes on the prize. Today tastes like a piece of the action, and it never tasted this good.
That's their way of stopping HIV. What about you?
Today tastes like a new tradition, like an old favorite. Tastes like all hands on deck and all eyes on the prize. Today tastes like a piece of the action, and it never tasted this good.
Yes. Welcome back from that rest and from that break, if you like. And this is the behind the headlines. We are discussing 100 years of Uganda's parliament, and we are taking stock of where we have been at a time, from a time when it started. The first Legislative Assembly was held on the 23rd of March 1921, and that must have been somewhere in Entebbe, and then later transferred to the KCCA, what do they call it, City Hall, and then eventually the parliamentary building next to the City Hall was built, and that's where now I think towards independence, towards the Independence Parliament. So when we are talking about Independence Parliament 1962, we are talking about where the current parliament resides. And this discussion, I have the Honorable Alice Alaso. Alice Alaso, someone sent me a message. I apologize that I referred to Alliance for National Transformation as Alliance for National Platform. I apologize for mixing the platform part with, for mistaking the transformation for platform. Those are two different titles, and but she's the Deputy National Coordinator and former...
Now I am also the Acting National Coordinator for the last, I don't know, many months.
Ah, yes. Since General Muntu went to stand. Yes, that's true. But we also have the Honorable Dombo Emmanuel. Dombo Emmanuel was so many things. When he referred to leaders who are tested from their springboard, he was also a guild president at Makerere University, and then became MP. He was MP for 20 years, and
when was he guild president?
Dombo, when were you guild president?
1991.
1991.
But also I was a student leader in National College of Business Studies in Nakawa.
Ah.
These are old people.
But you know the funny thing, someone has sent a very long message, but then in the message, the guy includes and says, but some of these tested leaders are some of the leaders who have had funny, he uses the word dodgy decisions in government. You will need to respond to some of those doubts. So, which brings me to ask Gobi, from your viewpoint, do you think that when Dombo talks of challenges and contradictions as he mentions them and says that there are distortions being created, are these challenges and contradictions being brought, you know, to bear on the leaders we have currently by the people themselves due to their changing needs and demands, or you think that it is the leaders who are changing? We need to touch briefly on that. If we are complaining that MPs are no longer carrying out their duties or their roles as they should be, is it the changing trends in life generally? Because if you have a situation where the people now demand for certain things which they used not to demand 30 years ago from their leaders, what is exactly changing? Is it the leaders or the people?
I think the answer is simple. The leaders. To me, I think the leaders in this country have also been changing. It's not the country alone which is changing. Because I always ask myself a question when I watch some of the debates on Parliament, I mean on TV in Parliament. I ask myself, do these MPs actually represent the views of the people whom they came to Parliament to represent, who elected them, or they are representing their own personal opinions? Because I've not been a very ardent follower of Parliament, but the few times I switch on TV to watch what they are doing there, like for example, ever since they resumed this Parliament since COVID time, which had been disrupted, I've seen a number of times when they are there, for example, debating on how now they are going to vote for the speaker, and the debates are not very, very palatable, in my view. The member raises and he says, Madam Speaker, you know, I've come to report to you that the following people are decampaigning you. And now I wonder, is this member of Parliament representing, is he representing the people who elected them? To me, I think, Charles, you know, it was on this program sometime back when I said philosophers are very critical people whom we should listen to and their philosophy. One of them is a man called Walter Lippmann. In 1901, he guided American society, and he told them in his book, Public Opinion, that a society has two groups of people. It has what we call the specialized class and the bewildered herd. The specialized class is usually a very small group of people who have naturally emerged out of this bewilderment to gain some characteristics, some features that the society must look at whenever they are selecting leaders, whom we call the leaders. And then he said that if a society does not protect itself from the tramplings of the bewildered herd that society has no future. How do you protect the society from the tramplings of the bewildered herd? By ensuring that the people in leadership do what actually society feels that is the critical things which are supposed to be done. Now, in Uganda, I now have begun to see a lot of protest voting. People are voting to say, if they have done this and they are the specialized class, let us send there a bewildered member. I remember, you know, in our days of UID at Makerere, some of our UID leaders used to tell us that, you know, don't worry about whom you are voting. Even if it is a jerrycan, if it is going to oppose the other, it's better than the other human being to take very seriously. And to me, I thought these were jokes, we were just joking, and little did I know that actually time will come
when they implement it,
when some of these things happen in Uganda. Because to me, seriously, I think the representation in Parliament and other, because now the Parliament is the mirror image, is the face of our society. What is happening in the lower levels, in local councils and so on, where some of these local programs and policies have to be debated and implemented. So I think your question, is it the leaders who have changed or the people who voted them? To me, I think this started with the leaders changing, and they frustrated the electorate to the extent that they now felt they can elect anyone to go and just do what the Honorable was saying, just to go and eat also. Others have been eating.
Okay.
You know? Now, finally, you know, Honorable Dombo was talking about this issue of MPs providing services. You know, the politics in Uganda changed. And you see, this is the tragedy also of just adopting certain things because they are working elsewhere. I always say the biggest lesson of development, economics, is that everywhere is different. If something is working in America, in Europe, there's no guarantee that it will work in Uganda. Because these are two different societies, at different levels of development, different orientation. To think that in Uganda an MP is going to be elected to go to Parliament and legislate laws and whatever they are supposed to do, their appropriate budget. To me, I think these are some of the things we need to change, and we change also the Parliament itself, its role. Because now people have shown you that if you are not ready to help us provide these services, because this is a poor society. In a poor society, you can't just tell people that me, I'm an MP who has come to represent you, taking your views on how we can improve the laws of Uganda, how we can change the constitution or not change it. And they will say, no, we don't need that. For us, our problem here is dirty water. And government has failed to improve our water. Are you going to sort it out? Now, either you turn yourself into a lobbyist who's going to go to government and lobby to clean up the water, or you must provide the water. So, even look at our president himself. Our president has told you severally that he was forced to create a fund in his own office, actually in his own house, in the state house, to help provide services to the people, because wherever he goes, people are demanding those services. They say, Mr. President, we are not going to vote for you unless if you solve our problem. My children are here, they don't have fees.
Which I think tells either the reality on the ground, demanded by the people, that this is what we demand, or it also shows somewhere that government has failed somewhere to deliver those things.
Yeah.
You see. But as we discuss that, let me read some of the questions and comments coming from the people. Someone called Solomon from Kisoro says, Charles, thank you for bringing Honorable Dombo. I think he has hit the nail on the head. The ordinary Ugandan doesn't understand what an MP is supposed to do or to be doing. So we should change the constitution so that the people elect parties, and parties should choose who to send to parliament. That's what he says. Then someone called there is someone here from radio. He says he's from Radio Messiah in Kasese. He says, my brother Charles, let every one of us globally learn positively from the best practices of the late John Pombe Magufuli, especially in fighting corruption and controlling public expenditure. Otherwise, thank you. Then another person is called Nixon says, Charles, I can only celebrate the CM members and those who were pro-people, other than today's parliamentarians who only think of their stomach. And then the number of someone called Humphrey says, Charles, thanks, I'm watching, thanks for the show. Thanks, Humphrey, thanks for watching. And then someone called Mr. Walker. Mr. Walker says, good evening, Charles. Glad to see Honorable Alice Asunat on the show. Please find out for me the procedure to join her political party. I would love to contest for a parliamentary seat in 2026 under her party, ANT. Honorable Alice Alaso, you have someone there who wants to join the party. And then someone called Joshua says, Charles, I think the issue is our legislators are polarized towards libertarianism as an aspect of democracy other than sovereign integrity. We need to learn to tailor our national garments according to our native clothes than applying cosmetic ideals. This guy talks big. And then someone called Francis. Francis says, politics is like a cash cow now. It's like a cash crop for in Uganda. That's what he describes politics as. I will be opening my Twitter messages shortly to continue with the discussion, to bring in the comments and questions that are coming from that side. Alice, Honorable Alice, you heard what Gobi says, and aren't we being too harsh on our leaders to demand for certain standards, including even the institutions of government? Because when did the Parliament, for example, of UK start? 12, 13, 15? About there. That's over 800 years. The American Parliament, 1789. And then we are here, even 100 we are doubting. We are actually thinking we started in 1962.
59 years.
And the metamorphosis that some of these institutions go through, we tend to be hard on ourselves as a country. I'm not saying we need the best quality, In any case, now we have a more globalized world. But are we being fair to ourselves when we rush to compare ourselves with the greatest of 800 years or 500 years without learning the processes that they went through and the stages of development that they went through, including the primitive stages? Are we really being fair to ourselves? Or our situations should not be, we should not use that as an excuse?
Charles, perhaps we are, let me first agree with you, maybe we are being too hard, but so I don't lose out on this person who wants to join ANT. Let me appreciate the person and ask you, Charles, please share my number with that person, so that he can, but ordinarily you can pass plot.
Mr. Walker.
Yes, pass Buganda Road, plot 87, and you become a member. It is that easy. But you can also get in touch with me. Charles will share your number. And I also don't want to lose out on the issue of service delivery. Before I answer that question, I happen to have been the first person to take the step of buying an ambulance for my district. I had not
From your district or in Parliament generally?
In Parliament.
You were the first to buy an ambulance?
Yes.
So you started the problem?
I actually did not think anybody was going to imitate me or do anything.
Where did you get the idea from, the first idea? You just thought about it?
I had sat in the Social Services Committee. And then finally it became the Health Committee. It was split into Health and Education.
And Education, yes.
And every other time we would ask for ambulances, and we wouldn't get ambulances. Then that district called Serere was carved out of Soroti. And then the mothers were dying. So one day it happened that we had got money for new vehicles. And I had come from a previous parliament and my car was still working. I said, why don't I get this headache out of the way? So I really bought an ambulance, as in an ambulance.
A real ambulance.
A real ambulance. And I went to Ministry of Health. I said, this is a donation to Serere. So they even gave me a number plate of Ministry of Health. It's only my ambulance that bears a number plate of Ministry of Health.
Wow. Is it still there in the district?
It is there, but now maintenance is to me and it has been run down. I'm out of Parliament, so I can't do anything.
You didn't withdraw it like some MPs do?
No, I left it
when
there.
They lose?
I left it there, they vandalized it, but that's a matter for another day.
Yeah.
So the issue is really an indictment on government which collects taxes and doesn't consider the prioritization of service delivery. And because these members of Parliament are the nearest face of government in their community, people will ask you, now people are dying here, now schools, now this, and then this person begins to feel a bit awkward. And when they give you some salary in Parliament, they publicize the salary until you also look really funny. So part of the problem is the failure of service delivery by the executive arm of government. Even here the president sometimes says, these MPs are not helping me in service delivery. How does he expect the MPs to help? The people have appropriated...
To mobilize.
People have appropriated past the budget.
Yeah.
And it is up to the executive to deliver. And then you find him blaming them also. So it is, it's really partly that government, not largely, not partly, largely, that government is not doing what it should do. And also for me this week, what has been very touching is that story I suppose all of us had. The story of Soroti Hospital, where a child was sent to Mulago. A mother who had co-joined twins was sent to Mulago, and the National Referral Hospital
could not
do anything. You need to visit Mulago, that renovated Mulago, and you will run back to some village hospital because it's not working. So anyway, so they sent back this, and I want to congratulate the doctors out there
who took just a brave decision to work in that dilapidated theater. You need to see the theater of Soroti Hospital. So that, and then they were able to...
They were successful.
Yeah. So when you look at that...
And saved their life.
Yeah. When you look at that level of service delivery, and you try to tease out the dividends of representation, you actually fail to see how one helps the other to be realized. So now I'll get back to what you were asking. Maybe we are too hard, maybe we are not. I almost started at some point believing the narrative of the NRM, that we needed 50 years, 100 years, until about last week when I listened to so much about the late president of Tanzania in his 5 years and 5 months and what he was able to achieve. Then I told myself, no, we are being treated to a lie by the NRM, 35 years, heading to 40, and you can't fix hospitals, you can't fix schools. Now I know that we are not being too hard on ourselves. We have lowered our expectations so much that we are able to put up with all this irresponsibility by government, thinking that, every time they will come here, they will tell us, you are not yet first world. Now Tanzania is what? We are not America.
Okay.
But in terms of roads, what is Tanzania? We have been like Tanzania until... So for me, I think the solution is really in leadership. And lastly, I don't want us to dispense...
Tanzanians' road is better now than Uganda?
A lot of them. At least there is the improvement in terms of the number of the kilometers tarmac that has been worked on in the last 5 years. It's 10 times more than what we worked on here. So, yeah. Even the new
I'll need to check that. Even
you can check
even the quality, the source of money. Maybe we need to check all those variables and...
we can't, but I
most
resist.
of the data Honorable saw was the Facebook data, the social media data. It's not true.
But I also traveled to Tanzania, not very far back, and I think I could see some things with my own eyes.
Yeah. No, they have, of course, been fantastic improvements.
Yeah, but let me come back here because I do not want to...
But I like the idea, I like your general principle, two of them, where one, that we can compare with comparables. Tanzania, Kenya, if we're talking of Botswana, Malawi,
Rwanda.
Those are good, and I agree those are fair comparisons. And then the point you make, which I think the Dombo will have to follow up on after Honorable Alice, is that it is the dilemma, or actually the argument, that if the demand of the people or their need is a hospital and you are their representative and they don't have it, then you have to look for a way of providing it. I think that's also a fair point, which puts a pressure on really a leader to maybe go out of their way to promise, to do it themselves, or to lobby for it. And that's where now the real issues of our argument really should be. But finish that point.
Yes, but then I don't want to dispense with this whole idea of democracy. Honorable Dombo suggested that we probably might have to rethink politics, elections, and go for selections. Selections don't really represent the will of the people. In most of the petitions we have been having and complaints about elections, it is that there is an attempt to impose the will, especially of the ruling party, on people out there. And that is not the way to go. I think we can help our democracy, we can help our institutions. One, by you people in the leadership of the ruling party, allowing the institutions to work and respecting their mandate. Two, what seems to be the strand that runs through parliamentary, through parliaments and through elected leaders is the values that they espouse. I think that we should move as a country to a point where we are able to get a majority of incorruptible people in the leadership of this country. Because if I spend my money buying votes, most likely when I come here, those things of legislation, mandate and whatever are not my priority. My priority is to recoup. So do we have persons of integrity? And I want to challenge Ugandans. You are out there. You are busy complaining that your member of parliament has a forged A level. You have a genuine A level. Offer yourself. You are busy complaining these people are corrupt. Why don't you, a person of integrity, bring those values and we use them?
Will they be elected?
Yeah, let them try. I mean, it is it's a different matter sitting back and a different matter offering yourself. So, because we really need to recast leadership in this country to qualitative leadership, not just having a quantity of people whose values, whose character, whose behavior is highly questionable, and we think we can entrust the destiny of the nation and the destiny of our children's children to such people. No, we have to begin to focus on values-based leadership. I believe that will help the growth of democracy and governance in this country.
Okay, there is someone called, let me see if this question, Dombo can, start even from it. Someone called Chris says, President Museveni has over-democratized. Now everybody wants to be bigger than everyone. No organizational discipline at all. Discipline in politics is messing up the country. Honorable Dombo, you can start from there. Is that the issue? But also following with what Honorable Ali Salaso has said, pick it up from that.
Charles, right now I'm coming from Chankwanzi. And we had gone on a mission sent by the Secretary General to do the final preparations for the NRA members of Parliament to go for some political education in order to enable them to appreciate what leadership is all about.
What some people call political indoctrination.
Those are names. But one of the things I have asked myself, every time we talk about the will of the people, which people? Which will? Because you cannot get a group of ignorant people expressing a view, and now that becomes the will of the people. Time comes when the leaders must be more knowledgeable, they must provide leadership, and that's why they are leaders. And this business of people pretending all the time that we are representing the will of the people, we are consulting, it may not be necessary to consult people who don't know. It may be necessary for you to provide leadership to the people that you represent. It is for this reason, actually, that the president directed that the members of NRM must be taken to Chankwanzi to enable them appreciate society, the formation of society, what are the challenges, what are the problems we are dealing with, where do we want Uganda to be, and how do we get there. We may have, in itself, we may have challenges. So, in democracy, there is a time I went to a community, which I will not mention, that such and such a community, but I went to a community. People who don't understand anything, when the voting came, they picked the ballot papers and they went with them in the mountains.
Now we are going to guess, even if you don't mention, because we know places which are mountainous. We are going to think around Elgon. We are going to think around the Rwenzori. Karamoja is it mountainous. The other side.
When they came down, you have mentioned one of the areas. When they came down, the elders had determined. So, I sat during the campaigns recently when I was moving around with the president, so I said, so these people are going to determine who their leader is. They could hardly appreciate what their problems were. And when I met them, the immediate problem, they wanted the food.
Yeah, they were hungry.
The people were hungry. Now, whoever brought food, for them, that was the leader they were electing. So, that's why, Honorable Lasso, I deliberately...
Now we are zeroing in by elimination. That cannot happen amongst Batoro. So it is not the Rwenzori. Now I'm coming back to the east.
No, I don't want to be accused of vulgarizing any community here.
Okay.
So, Honorable Lasso, when I talked about the issue of democracy, I have been elected. I support democracy. But I ask the biggest democracy in the world, when you compare it with China, which doesn't have that level of democracy, how have the two communities transformed? And for us in Africa, what is it that we must do in order to enable our people? Given those two tendencies which Honorable Professor Gobi has talked about, why the community is changing to say this specialized group has betrayed us, let us take one of ourselves to see what they are going to do. So those concerns which are coming up, these are legitimate issues, and these questions are going to be asked about Parliament and the role of Parliament in representation. There has been a proposition.
But just, okay,
there has been a proposition
yes.
by one of the people. You read something on your WhatsApp group, on one of the social media platforms, where somebody said, would it be right in the future to elect an organization, and organization selects its best?
Elect the
party.
The Parliament.
You elect the party NRM. The NRM has a list to say this is our best, provided that best is able to deliver on the mandate that they are supposed to do. Right now, when you sit and listen to members of Parliament submit, and it's not only here, it's the entire African continent, many areas, people have challenges.
Why don't you learn? You do a lot of these studies. These travels are about studying, and in government, if you were to implement them, I think, is it the South African model and the Rwandan model, where they elect an MP?
Proportional representation.
But once they have elected the MP, you are elected as MP, because you are a national leader, they can take you to represent the people. For you from Butaleja, they will take you to represent the people of Karamoja. Then they will take Honorable Alice from Teso to represent the people of Fort Poto. Then they take Gobi from Butambala to represent the people of Gulu.
Charles,
so that it only goes on the issues, not that I am helping my people to get toilets.
Charles, I want to tell you that one of the challenges we have in Uganda is the depth of politics and the people appreciating what must be done. I will give an example. I will not mention names. While serving as a commissioner, I served there with the leader of the opposition.
Yeah.
And I intimated to him, I said, but your hometown, which is now a city, has challenges of the infrastructure and the roads. Why don't you pick a phone and ring the president? Because pick a phone and ring the president. He will, first of all, he will get excited. He will say, the leader of the opposition is ringing the president. What is it? The president will definitely return your call. And two, why don't you raise these issues? Because you represent us, but you even represent the NRM people in that area. Because although you are the opposition. Unfortunately, in Uganda, people think that when they have been elected in the opposition, they are not part of government. Which is a lie. Because government has only one arm of government called the Parliament. And that Parliament is an arm of government, the NRM government right now that we have. So, when you are on that side, how best can you deliver on your mandate as a member of Parliament, representing everybody, even when you have been elected on the opposition? Could be that was the challenge my sister Alaso had. when she couldn't pursue the ambulance through the budgetary processes, and she opted to seek to use her part of her emoluments to buy for an ambulance. But I know that in Butaleja, the few times I attempted, we pushed and got ambulances for Busole Hospital. Over the 20 years I was in Parliament, we got 3 ambulances. Just because we were pushing. And to me, in principle, there are principles which I just developed internally as an individual to say, I will never make a personal contribution for an institutional building. Never. Unless World Vision comes and says they are building a maternity and they want a community contribution, I would provide.
At what point did you change that? Did you take that decision?
I took a decision because I knew.
Was it from the beginning of your tenure as a principal, or it was, you know, when the scenarios of ambulance buying came, and then you said this is going to
the ambulance buying came in later, but I later saw that you cannot create an impact by contributing 100,000 to a sub-county building or to a school. You call a community that want to build a school and you give them 1 million. 1 million cannot build a school. But you can do much more by pushing government to ensure that the government delivers on the things that they must do. So, on the issues of governance, that is a challenge and a debate that we must get up to do, but also people improving on their perception of politics, that even when you have been elected on the opposition, you are part of government. This is a debate I've always had with my colleagues in the city here, my brother Honorable Kwagu. Coming, you saw what the opposition were doing here. They bring the Honorable Vesije to come and commission roads which have been constructed by NRM.
Yes, Honorable Alice.
Charles, I think there is an impression that needs to be corrected.
Yeah.
If you follow the explanation of Honorable Dombo, you would then get an impression that the areas which are doing badly in terms of services, the areas lacking ambulances and have the worst schools and whatever, are areas that are led by the opposition because they will not place a call and talk to the president. Again, I think that is dysfunctionality. When you have a Ministry of Education, when you have a Ministry of Health, if the institutions were working, they should be able to deliver service everywhere without thinking about who was elected. So I don't necessarily have to call the president. But secondly, areas in this country that vote NRM most, some of them are really in a terrible shape. You need to go to Sebei. In Sebei, they really vote NRM. But a majority of them still have to go through Kenya to arrive back in Uganda. You need to go to Karamoja. Honorable Dombo did not
Mr. Gobi, don't laugh.
Honorable Dombo did not tell us that he went to Karamoja. But I go back and forth to Karamoja. And I can tell you that the starvation in Karamoja amidst that wealth, the mineral wealth of Karamoja, which gets ferried every day. When you sleep in Soroti town, you hear lorries and trailers ferrying rock from Karamoja to bring to Kampala cement factory instead of giving Karamojong youth an opportunity to get money and buy cassava to eat. But the Karamojong vote this government 99%. They say Kiboye. Kiboye means let him stay forever.
Kiboye.
Kiboye. Let Papa, let the old man stay forever.
No change, meaning no change.
Don't disturb him.
So you hear, this one confirms to you that actually NRM has been elected without cheating, as the people have been saying. People have been saying Kiboye and electing NRM. Unlike what...
unfortunately, NRM does not reciprocate.
But Charles...
You know,
Charles,
but what
just
I
a
was,
minute, let her finish.
I was just highlighting the fact that it is not necessarily true that areas where there are no services, where there is a deficiency, are areas that are led by the opposition because they cannot place a call to the president. No, these things are everywhere. You know, one time there was this thing about district called Zombo, and I think Zombo was where the Honorable Minister Kuyuchin
was the woman MP. And the school was a disaster, but that's a minister who sits with the president in cabinet.
And Zombo happens to be from the original Nebi where I come from. And so I saw that report. That's all I can say.
Charles.
I saw that report. It was okay. And I think my colleague and good friend Nandutu, now MP-elect, is the one who did the story, if I'm not mistaken. But another one was done. Yes,
Charles, what my sister may not know is that Uganda is a poor country and will never at any one time have enough money to distribute equally to all places.
Are you saying she doesn't know that Uganda is growing?
No, she may believe that the government, because government has been elected and is fair, it will distribute the money and all districts and constituencies get the same share and develop at the same time. I want to tell you that when the government is working, it has technical people in the government who come from different areas. It has ministers who at times get skewed and want to develop the areas. That's why the debate was there in Parliament whether ministers should be technical people or they should be members of Parliament. You have also seen government priorities changing with the reshuffling of ministers. That has also happened. So, in struggling for the resources of government, everybody is pulling, trying to take to his area. And if you don't talk for your area, definitely you may have the challenges there. But I don't know when you last went to Karamoja. I was in Karamoja during the elections. I want to tell you that if the major road is connected from Moroto up to Kotido, because the one from Soroti up to Moroto is perfect and excellent. But you do see a contrast. This is something I wondered when I was driving through Karamoja. Because the moment you cross from Teso, you immediately see a structural difference within the population and within the physical development on the ground. I think this is something that is going to come over time, given the mentality and perception of the individuals, because all of us are not going to develop at the same pace, but it's something that wants to. But areas develop are a product of what the level of representation that they are.
Okay, let me read. I know it's getting more interesting, incidentally, at the tail end of the hour. But let me, and Gobi has questions he wants to ask both of you. It's our culture that the panelists ask some questions. But let me read for you a very interesting, and I want to thank John, my colleague, good friend John Asimwe, for sharing with me a very landmark research which was done by an organization called Tuawezas, and the survey was called Sauti za Wananchi, meaning the voice of the people. And they had 4 important insights, and I can share with the public and yourselves here, and you will, though time is short, but I will need you to make comments on them. Insight number 1 says, citizens see the main roles of MPs as to keep in contact with their constituency and constituents, and to communicate constituents' needs to government. And the result was that close to half of the citizens, 47%, see staying in touch with constituents or the constituency as an important duty of an MP, including a quarter of them, of the 47%, that is 26%, who put this ahead of all other duties of an MP. So forget about representation, oversight, and legislative role. For them, they see you have to be in touch. Now, that is where the issue of funerals comes in, and providing for that. Then, a similar number, 45%, see communicating constituents' needs to the government as an important duty of MPs, including those who see this as an MP's most important role. And they ranked these duties well ahead of any other. That is the citizens. Meaning 47%, 45% see the role of lobbying for development as more important than the primary role or historical role of MP, which are to oversight government or check government, to legislate, and to represent. So we need to be thinking, could this be under the ambit of representation? It is up to you. Then, insight number 2, citizens see consultations with their MP as their main channel for raising their concerns with Parliament. And then 60% see consultations with their MP as the main channel by which they can bring their concerns to the attention of Parliament more than any other mechanism. That's fine, I think. Then insight number 3 of the survey, the main way citizens report getting information on what is happening in Parliament is by watching or listening to live TV or radio broadcasts. This is also okay. And then issue number 4 is, insight number 4 is that the most widespread promises, this is now the crux of the matter, the most widespread promises made by MPs to potential voters during the recent election campaigns were to improve road infrastructure and health services. Now, this is what the people want. Mr. Gobi, you now need to see this as an academician, because we are talking about, you earlier argued that leaders are the ones who have changed. But it appears here the citizens are the ones who are putting this direct demand on their leaders. So between the hen and the chicken, which one started first? That citizens report that the most common promises made by MPs during the recent election campaign, this is another finding, was to improve roads. This is in response to the demand of the citizens, cited by 41%, and this is the most commonly recalled promise in both rural areas and urban areas. And that substantial number of citizens also report that their MPs promise to improve health services, increase access to clean water, build schools, create job opportunities for young people, or increase access to electricity services. The promises made by MPs are similar in both rural and urban areas, though residents of rural areas are more likely to say their MP promised clean water, and residents of urban areas are more likely to say their MP promised to build schools. So the promises continue being the identical promise made, but that nonetheless both the urban and rural MPs are doing it. Mr. Gobi, maybe you can make one comment on this, 1 minute comment, and then you ask them their questions, and then when they are responding, if there is anything they need to respond to this and your questions, they can do the same.
Bottom line, Charles, from whatever you have been reading, is the fact that the current parliamentary model, Westminster's model, does not work here. It's not fit for the purpose to which people elect their leaders. And that actually brings me to my question, the first one. And I'm going to ask 2 questions, which I will request both of them to answer as they wind up. Don't you think, honorable members who have been in that August House, that it's time Uganda looked into our native models of legislation of Parliament? In Bunyoro we had Rukurato, in Uganda we had Ruchiko, and several other places. Were they not really discussing the real issues that were pertaining the needs of people and society of Uganda, than bringing this British model of discussing what the elite feel that they are the most important things a member of Parliament should do, yet the people, your people, we are telling you, Honorable, our main issue here is the health care. Now for you are like, the executive is the one to do that.
Yeah.
Now, you are going to lose the election the next time because you are on different wavelength with your electorate. So our models of legislation, what happened to them? Then secondly, don't you think it's time Uganda adopted a two-tier kind of parliament where we have a House of Commons and an upper house? Although we don't have lords here, we can call it something. But do we really still have a way we are going to improve the debate and the laws and other expectations coming out of this rally of 529 people? Because to me it's a political rally. You are dressing every morning. And I think, as I conclude, we need to also ask ourselves, what is this one key challenge that is holding Uganda's transformation? And if we think out that, is legislation the answer to that one key challenge? If yes, why? If no, then what is the answer? I thank you. But I liked Honorable Dombo's summary of, remember that question? It's my take home today. The will of the people. Which people? Which will? Honorable Dombo must be a disciple of dictatorship.
Okay, let them start responding to that because, do you mind if I give you an additional one question each so that you now answer once? Because Ismail Ladu says, Charles, find out for me from the brilliant panelists in the studio their thoughts about Parliament being made a voluntary service with no salary, save for some minimum facilitation. This, I believe, would reduce cases where MPs have become providers of services that should be the sole responsibility of the executive. So you can, and then another person finally says, Charles, I'm Honorable Lucas Buhaka from Kasese. No, this person is talking about a different thing. So you can maybe make comments on that, on the one of Ismail as well. But let me give you 2 minutes each. Honorable Ali, starting with you.
Thank you, Charles. Well, time to look into local models, as Dr. Ram says. I think that we probably may not have to go there because we already have district councils that should pay attention to local issues and derive from their local context. And this parliament here, this institution of either 100 or something years, is apparently the only thing that currently brings all of us together from every part of. So it is also an institution that is representative of our Ugandan identity. We don't necessarily need to do away with it. We need to create a situation where that parliament is helped to deliver on its mandate. I will hasten to add that for as long as we choose to have a parliament, then we will have to pay them salary. We will have to facilitate them to come and sit there. I don't think it would be reasonable to say, find your own fuel, drive from Kotido and come to Kampala. You will not have any representative coming from Kotido. So, but it should be reasonable and they should be facilitated to do their work. The one thing I really think, and I want to take the last question also, the question of should we also have a two-tier parliament? My take is that, so then that takes us back to the Westminster kind of model, which you initially proposed that we may have to rethink. And for me, so what will the two levels deal with?
Is it legislation? Is it policy review? Is it what is it? We have to think deeper than just having that proposal and see. I liked your first question. Is legislation the cure to our problem? So is this two levels, Senate, Commons, Upper House, whatever, will they cure anything? What are they intended to do before we even arrive at an answer? I want to suggest that to really deal with the dilemma we are in, government has to squarely face the issue of poverty in this country and service delivery. I understand that in most Scandinavian countries, most Schengen countries, people don't even know their mayors. Why? Because you don't need the mayor to tell you, or to, you call him and say, my water is not, No, the systems are working. So if we fix this, people will stop overburdening the members of parliament. If the drugs are in hospital, why are you asking me to buy you drugs when you can go to the dispensary and get treated? But as long as government absconds on its role of service delivery, the MPs will have to really pay through the nose to get elected. Lastly, what is the key challenge? The key challenge is leadership. For me, it is leadership. That is the key challenge in this country.
And legislation is all of it?
No, I don't think.
That's very interesting. Honorable Dobo.
Charles.
Yes.
And our listeners. First of all, I want to thank our listeners for the kind of response they have given, and it shows this is a very popular program and many people listen to it throughout the whole country. And but don't you think Uganda needs the native models? The Ugandans should know that there was a big debate during the CA. Do we go regional integration or regional governments, or do we go decentralization? Does decentralization answer the challenge that the regional governments would create? This is still a debate, but I'm one of the people who was a very strong supporter of the regional tier. When the regional tier government was supposed to be constituted, because there are some challenges that are regional, and there are some challenges which cannot best be answered under decentralization by the districts. For instance, there are many roads that go through Butareja, going to Namutumba, Iganga, Mbali, and other neighboring districts. But it would not be helpful for Butareja to do their roads up to their borders when in the next district the road is not motorable. So it would just be good that once a road, a trans-district road, which is now a regional road, is being worked on, it must be worked on in totality in order to increase mobility and movement of goods and services and the people. So that one would be best answered under a regional government. So the native problems, native models would be good if they are put at regional level, but now we have decentralization, which unfortunately has not provided all the solutions that we anticipated that it would. Then do you think it is time to adopt the upper house? Yes. I want to tell you, Mr. Gobi, first of all, the issue would be the constitution of the upper house. Given this democracy where people choose to say, let us send somebody to go and eat, the people who make those decisions must be limited on the areas of governance that they must talk about. We could create two houses, a lower house, which talks about the general problems, and then the upper house that either ratifies or deals with strategic areas like defense, foreign affairs, budgeting. Then you leave the lower house to deal with the local governments, local government roads, local government health centers, and issues like that. When you go to Kenya, I've been a consultant at Parliament, going to train members of Parliament who usually come from Kenya. I got surprised that many members of Parliament who they bring, they come from the regional assemblies, and for them, they have elevated the regional assemblies to the level of members of Parliament of Uganda, that they should bring them here to learn, and they take a consultant of my level who has been in Parliament that long in order for them to appreciate what they are doing. So Uganda may want to adopt that. Isn't it high time we had strengthened the regional government and paid them better instead of paying highly the members of Parliament so that everybody is scrambling to come there? Finally, what is the single problem, challenge that you'd look at? Throughout this campaign, Mr. Gobi, I discovered that one of our biggest challenges is the informality and the people who only work the subsistence production. People who work for only the consumption. The president one time asked, Professor Gobi, you earn a salary to help you subsist. To a person in the community, in the village, who does not earn a salary and they are the majority, how do they survive if they can only work for Kida Chonga? There are services that we wish to get from government that people would get for themselves if they were in the money economy. But because everybody is in the subsistence, they work for food, which is good, but time has come when we must transform the people of Uganda from subsistence economy to the commercial economy. Once people have money, they will provide themselves the things that they are coming to government. But because everybody is in subsistence, they are poor. Now they think the member of parliament is the best provider on the things even which they could provide for themselves. Can legislation be the answer? Absolutely not.
Okay. A good way to end. And I pray that this discussion continues, and if time allows and opportunity, we will discuss these issues again, because very important, very critical as you realize them. And I want to thank the Honorable Alice Alaso, the National Coordinator of the Alliance for National Transformation. Thank you so much for coming this late. Thanks so much, Honorable Emmanuel Dombo, the Director of Information and Publicity of the NRM in the Secretariat. Thanks a lot. And thanks to Mr. Gobi Ramadan from MOBS. I must admit that we had also invited the Honorable Semu Junganda and Honorable Sewungu, current MPs, but they couldn't make it, and Honorable Semuju sent an apology that he was up country, so we missed you, but we will be looking forward to having this discussion again. And I think he must be campaigning. He must be campaigning, and he's putting up such a formidable campaign war chest, and we look forward to the campaigns ending well for all. And from the team, the producers, all the producers, thank you very much. And from the technical team, thanks a lot for giving us the opportunity and for ensuring that the program can be pushed out there to everybody. But most importantly, my biggest thanks goes to my biggest thank you goes to all out there, you the viewer, sitting in your sitting room every Wednesday 10 p.m. to midnight to watch this show, and to my friend Moses Kamabale, who has lost his wife. Pole sana sana sana, pole sana. We pray that God gives you and family the strength to endure that pain of losing the children, their mother, and to you, your dear wife. We are praying for you. Until next week, continue following the SOPs. COVID is with us, and now the scientists are telling us that the other strains have been detected in Uganda. So don't drop your guard. Continue wearing your masks, continue social distancing, and sanitize as much as possible. And if you can avoid meeting as many people in crowds, do that. That's better. Wash your hands with soap. But if you belong to the vulnerable group, kindly look out for the vaccine stations and go and get a jab. Don't miss it, especially if you belong to the vulnerable group. Otherwise, God bless you all. Continue praying for this country and ensure working hard to make this country united and to develop and advance better. Until next week, God bless you all. God bless Uganda.
Welcome to English in a Minute. Every language has weather-related expressions. Two common weather conditions are rainy and sunny.